Connie Babb. How many of you are uncomfortable with needles? What if you had to use a needle to inject your body every day, let alone your child's body, with medication? 2 weeks ago, I found out my son has to prick his finger 168 times a week to monitor his blood glucose levels and inject his medicine into his body 42 times a week using a needle. My son is starting middle school, and among the other natural changes in his body he has to deal with as preteen, he developed a disease on top of it. My 11-year-old son is one case among many other children that have been diagnosed with juvenile type 1 diabetes. In 2012, the CDC reported approximately 208,000 children are diagnosed with and challenged with the risks associated with juvenile type 1 diabetes. In 2010, diabetes remained the 7th leading cause of death in the United States, with 235,000 death certificates listing diabetes as the cause of death, according to the National Diabetes Statistics Report 2014. Dr. Bill Quick from Health Pro figured 5% of children with juvenile type 1 diabetes die in their sleep. One cause of death is hyperglycemia, which is low blood sugar. Another cause of death is a child's insulin pump's computer malfunctioning and giving a false blood glucose levels. The whole idea of my son having the same chance as dying as he had getting the disease is what keeps me waking up at night. Sitting up at night and worrying about this risk does not solve anything with my son's diagnosis or helps anyone else that's been diagnosed with juvenile type 1 diabetes. I've read multiple books, articles, journals, and websites about juvenile type 1 diabetes since the diagnosis. My son Sammy picked up the phone, called me, and said, "Mom, school doctor said if my blood glucose levels ever get too high, I'm not going to be able to play sports, but I gained 6 pounds. Then he said he had to go and hung up the phone. My heart sinks knowing what he is dealing with, and the fact he may not wake up the next morning has torn me into pieces. But with faith and hope that his education is rounded and he continues to care for his disease, he will prevail and live a long, healthy life." I opened up a little bit about the psychological challenges, but other risks are heart and blood vessel disease, nerve damage, kidney damage, eye damage, foot damage, and skin conditions that every parent and child must prevent when they are dealing with juvenile type 1 diabetes. All risks are possible but preventable with hard work and dedication from parents and children. When a child has juvenile type 1 diabetes, they must calculate their carbohydrates, divide it by a given number, click the counter on the needle to sum of the equation, and then inject themselves with insulin before they eat their calculated meal. In my son's case, the beta cells that produce the hormone insulin in the pancreas is slowly being destroyed. What this means is his body is flooding slowly with glucose, and he must be monitored constantly to account for his increase and make adjustments to his formula for calculating the correct amount of insulin to inject. If he does not calculate correctly for the increased amount of glucose, he will get hyperglycemia. Hyperglycemia is opposite of hypoglycemia, which is high blood sugar. That can damage your nerves, blood vessels, and your organs. My son pricks his finger every 15 minutes after each meal for 2 hours and records his results to monitor the slow change in his body. Sammy has to be monitored several times a day and throughout the night at this point. Juvenile type 1 diabetes is a serious disease, and all of us should be aware of it. Letting those know in your community, schools, and in the family helps build awareness. It's also a method of support for the parents and children that are dealing with the disease. Besides the risks that are associated, there are many costs. With juvenile type 1 diabetes, cases are increasing 3 to 5% a year in the United States. It's looking at a 41% increase in costs, according to Maren McKenna with Scientific American. As new treatments emerge, costs are said to decrease, but as of 2012, the American Diabetes Association came out with a report starting in the United States, showing they've invested $245 billion in direct medical costs and reduced productivity for diagnosed diabetes. For a parent to treat their child with type 1 diabetes, they will incur average medical costs of $8,000 a year, and their medical expenditures will be 2.3 times higher than those who are not treated for diabetes. That's according to the CDC's 2014 National Diabetes Statistics Report. Today, we have seen how juvenile type 1 diabetes is a concern for everyone in the United States. The disease is growing and the number of children with risk and cost are growing. The next time you see a child wearing a medical alert bracelet or a medical alert necklace, remember, they may depend on medication in order to survive. Being aware and educated is only half the battle. Scientists are working diligently to find a cure and to treat juvenile type 1 diabetes efficiently. Till then, it is up to us to be aware and be there when a child with type 1 diabetes may need us.